the bus.
Coming back at y'all with episode 3 of BMF documentary Blowing Money Fast. I don't know why I was about to say season 3, but episode 3, the South's got something to say. Folks, all right, so full transparency here, as we record our episode 3, hopefully by now you've already been caught up on everything BMF. You done checked out our interview with Shan Nicholson. Also, he directed this episode, so I definitely just want to give a shout out again to him. He's directed a few other episodes. I'm not sure how many episodes he's going to be directing in this season, but he is your director, he's your showrunner, and so his print is really on this series. But beyond that too, like listening to the interview, you really get a behind the scenes sort of feel in terms of what it took to get this done, the importance of this documentary. Where is this documentary going to kind of sit on the hierarchy of all of the BMF content? And then all things as we get prepared for BMF season 2. So just want to drop that in there as we jump into our review for episode 3. Now, we're going to 1989, where Meech went to Atlanta. Terry's still in Detroit, running the day-to-day operations. I mean, hey, I knew about Terry never leaving. Didn't know that Meech went to Atlanta. But hey, I got to say, it don't surprise me because everybody fucking went to Atlanta at some point.
hey, look here. That was like the black escape point at one point. For folks that don't remember, before Atlanta turned into what most of you young folks know now as Atlanta, like it was like the escape place you would go to. I mean, I know plenty of folks that landed in certain situations where possibly down in Atlanta would be the place to go to ward off the demons until you can get back to home or something of that nature. So yeah, Atlanta in that like early 90s, that was definitely like the place to go to.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to say, like completely, and I'm not going to blanket this statement as much as I can because I know some of my folks watch this joint, but it's crazy to say that that same mentality that you had, that somebody had that mentality like a year or two ago, where they thought, oh, I can just do something in the DMV and then I could just go down to Atlanta, I'll be good. Atlanta? Yeah, like, oh, okay. Yeah, that run didn't last long. But back in the day.
Oh man, they thought they was in the 90s. What the fuck?
That's my point. That's exactly my point. I was like, man. Old head mentality, man. Like, you know.
Don't blame that on old heads. I don't know who mentality that is. Old heads would have known. They'd be like, nah, not Atlanta. What you going to, Savannah? Where you going to? You must be going to somewhere in the outskirts or something.
Kind of crazy, bro. Kind of crazy. But we all knew about Meech wanting bigger than Detroit, and this was a part of the expansion. But also too, let's just keep it 100 real quick. He wanted expansion. He had knew that Atlanta was a destination, but like let's just call it what it is. Freaknik Weekend was the place to be. It has been documented in numerous songs, references in many other bit of content.
Man, I think HBO did a doc on that jump, like in the late 90s.
Yep.
Jesus. Like, again, I was not of age to experience Freaknik at its height, but
but we did get the I don't know if I want to say it's the second iteration, but if it ain't the second iteration, it's definitely like the third iteration.
And that's early 2000s one?
Nah, I'm talking about what kind of transformed it to CIAA weekend.
Oh, no, that's a different monster altogether. That is not Freaknik. That is a different monster altogether.
Or Black or Black Bike Week. Like one of those two.
Black Bike Week may be it. That may be, but the CIAA jump, that was going at the same time Freaknik was going. It just lasted longer. Matter of fact, it is still going on, people.
Yeah. And I think if I'm not mistaken, didn't they just move it from down south?
Did they? Oh, that's disrespectful.
I can't remember. I need to check that. I don't know. Was it?
Man,
did they move it to like Charlotte or something real quick?
That ain't a bad move, but Charlotte's like, yeah, it's not a bad move to move to Charlotte, but
I'm tripping. Look at this. And it's right here in our backyard. 2023 CIAA basketball tournament in Baltimore. It was in Baltimore last week. last
They
year
can keep that.
or
They
this
keep
year.
that. I'm not going to Baltimore. It is not the same atmosphere. It's not the same.
Anywho, this where Meech met his girlfriend Tara Latara, his ex-girlfriend. This was sort of him wanting a change in scenery, wanting to expand. And even at this point, Atlanta was getting dry. And this was him being able to kind of and bring in his resources, obviously to connect down Miami to really like make everything get to booming as much as he could in this opportunity. We meet Wayne Joyner, BMF member, familiar face, by the way. I'm pretty sure I've seen him in something else, one of them other documentaries. But even with Atlanta kind of being a spot where he was able to make connections, able to get his face out there, obviously knowing that the print of what BMF did in this city, and it really wasn't just about the drugs, because if you looked at any of the footage, you definitely seen some faces that you knew back there, and that's that's like something that's
one particular face that everyone knows,
absolutely
and immediately affiliates with BMF.
Yep, don't need to be said. If you know, you know. I guess
back up, bring it back. That's my guy, Joe. Yeah.
Which makes me realize too, while he was getting the price he was getting it at, because obviously, as you hear, Anywho, what's your thought about this whole
17.5?
What's your thought about so far in terms of this episode, the movement to Atlanta?
Oh, man.
The movement to Atlanta, and as we really start to see BMF become what we know them to be down the line, because this was a really big fundamental point in that sort of global attention but national expansion.
What you saw, especially from Meech's move to Atlanta versus Terry staying in Detroit, is the family aspects of it all really come into focus here. Meech understood, as he says in the doc, like, man, you ain't got to take over everything by violence. Sometimes you could just build a bond with somebody and say, hey, I can make moves for you to make moves, and we can make moves together, and we can build this together. At times, it's against the norm for the way we saw Black organizations like this built. It normally was built off of fear. Like, you're gonna be scared of me because what I can do to you. A la Frank Lucas when he shot my man in his head in the street, is a way to gain fear and gain respect. Meech came from a situation like, man, all that's unnecessary. It's enough money for all of us to get out here.
Yeah.
And then you see him build that expansion that way, him going to different cities and telling them, basically pitching them all the same way. Like, hey, man, I'm here because I got this. You need it. How about we partner together? How about we make this together? I love just the aspect of him making that move and him understanding the need to expand and how to do it properly. It's equivalent, as I said before, or as anyone has ever said before, and I'm not just say just them. There's no difference in the way someone in the narcotics business builds their empire versus the way you may have seen the Jeff Bezos build Amazon. It's literally the exact same way. And when you do it and you do it right, you can build it pretty quickly and make enough room where everybody feels the love, everybody eats off of it. Yeah. And that's the aspect you love the most out of seeing everything that Meech did. It's just him, the way he built things and the way Terry held everything down in Detroit and then LA with the new connect. Again, as they love to say, the government made sure the drugs stopped out of these locations. Pretty sure they did. When the government stopped buying the drugs from these locations, I'm pretty sure it stopped coming into these locations. Yeah. But just them being resourceful enough to meet someone else that would have a connect for them to operate and use and understand that, hey, if we go here to get the product, we can get more than enough to move multiple places. At this point, you're no longer thinking small time. You're thinking more global, more national. And that's when you get a huge expansion of a business. Again, same way you would do a Fortune 500 company. You may start at a place. Starbucks started in Seattle. That don't mean it's going to stay in Seattle. You build it out. You build it out where the demand is. And when supply meets demand, especially in this game, man, you can grow expeditiously, extremely fast.
Yeah, for me, once we, because again, the first part of this documentary is him going to Atlanta, obviously leaving everything in Detroit, whether it's by fear or whether this was just always the game plan. But everything was always going to be good in Detroit because Terry had it locked down. He was always the numbers guy, the operations guy. So it wasn't it's kind of how you want to run a business.
Yeah.
You have a head coach that makes sure the team is doing what they got to do, but you also got a recruitment person who makes sure to say, hey, we got to see whatever prospects we can bring in. And it also was a lot to who Terry's identity was. I mean, Atlanta still does have that. Like, it is the Black Mecca. If you want to be a person, you got to kind of stop through there in order to get your name on the map and whatnot. But the biggest thing I got from the second half of the documentary was how big the F is in BMF. Where, like, obviously anything that's involving money seems to be priority. Money rules the world. Money rules everything around me. Cash
rules everything around me.
Yeah.
Hey, of course.
But he definitely went the very untraditional way of what Black people do, and he made it about family, which everybody talk to any Black person. I hate my family. I mean, we love our family, but we quick to say we hate our family, or we just tension and other stuff like that.
Meech was the first Toretto. And just to put everything around, put family first. He's the first Toretto.
Family, yep. And in all seriousness, like, the whole second half was nothing but character witnesses for him, which I knew this was coming, but like, it definitely left a big impact on me personally, because I felt like he was running it in a very responsible way. He had open door policy, everybody was equal, his face was there, you heard from his mouth about how you were going to be treated. He took time out for everybody. I mean, even when you talk about White Boy and his brother Gabe, who had a disability, but they said, listen, ain't nobody getting in the club unless Gabe in there first. Like, that goes a long way. When White Boy was he was the shooter. He said, I was the firecracker. I pulled up when I needed to. And you have to think that, like, that was a person who labeled himself as that, and that was not an intimidation thing. That was a complete respect thing, where he said, listen, this dude is looking out for my brother like I've never seen anybody to do so, and I'm willing to risk it all for him. This wasn't like, and I don't want to throw any names out there because I don't want nobody knocking down my door. But like, this wasn't like a, man, if you want in, you gotta do these things, and then that's how we rock. You know what I mean? This was more like a, you want in? All right, cool. All right, well, you in? It's respect. And talking about people sitting around playing games, and they out in the club, we all seen together. It wasn't just Meech in the VIP. Everybody was in the VIP, which is like what I'm so fascinated about this documentary, is just with this message being told, just how much video content we're about to get and more witnesses, because it also is kind of weird when we're going to have to hear people say on the contrary to this, where the people that's going to be like, they were hating and like, I'm interested in all that. But again, for this episode, in terms of the character witnesses of him, and like really making him to be a good person, and must think the same thing I say to Shan. Like, I actually kind of sit back and like, I'm like, Dad, Meech is a good person. I don't condone drug dealing, but Meech is a good person. And I think this is enough to say, like, hey, listen, like, this is a person whose heart was in the right place, who had everybody around him. But the things he did wasn't just.
We have a fascination with drug dealers. It's perfectly fine. Like,
and call it what it is. Society, American society has a fascination with serial killers and drug dealers.
Yes. And not just, when we say drug dealers, ain't talking about just Black folk, because we ain't the biggest drug dealers ever.
Not even close.
we love El
Chapo. Yep.
Hey.
Yep.
John Gotti. You know how many rappers rap about John Gotti? Like, come on, man.
You got people who are so obsessed with these folks, besides the real creepy people who be trying to go to the jails, trying to like marry these folks and whatnot. But you got folks going into Mexico and going into Colombia, talk about some El Chapo. Oh, where's El Chapo? I was like, y'all realize like these motherfuckers ruined this country, and y'all out here asking where these people at,
Do
and
you
where
realize
they're
by asking where they at and them not knowing who you are, they would just murder you on the spot? You think we're gonna leave you alive and you asking those type of questions? But
where El
again, it's
Chapo,
just
where
the
Pablo
overall,
Guzman? Like, what are y'all talking about?
it's the overall fascination of this lifestyle.
Yeah,
Like this lifestyle is extremely fascinating to Americans because it kind of depicts what we think of America, which is you can get here and make a bunch of money extremely fast and everything will be great.
yeah.
And we never see the downfall of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the point in this documentary, especially here, episode 3, when you get to the end of the episode and they talk about everything and they say, hey, we get to the club and all these different ethnicities looking at us drinking beer, and they knew exactly like, oh. And the only reason I really pinpoint that part of it is because something Meech said at the beginning. Like, you move to Atlanta because it's not hot there. You know, you can get these houses and stuff of this nature, and we could do it with what we're doing because if we did that in Detroit, cops would be everywhere. But the bigger you get, the more tension you get.
Yeah,
you know, they hitting these clubs more and more. You're doing this more and more. Of course, eventually you're going to get on the radar of law enforcement.
Yeah, the question I want to ask you really quickly is, it's also very interesting, and it wasn't Meech that said it. I think it was Clifford Adams that said it. A couple other things I want to talk about before we wrap up, but I believe they said that, like, listen, when we had the letters BMF, that attracted like law enforcement. What was it about it? Is it because like that sort of appeal, that sort of branding has a stereotype connected to it or whatnot? When you have like
that, it's the branding in general. I mean, once you brand yourself and the streets brand you a certain way, because I'm pretty sure it's not just them. You know, at this point, you're gonna get a little corner dude who going fake, perpetrate. You know, I'm with BMF. You know how it go. Like that's the way the streets move. Like,
yeah,
you need to be affiliated with the big dogs, so you're gonna affiliate yourself with them. Enough people do it. Law enforcement will what is this BMF that everyone's talking about? You see the clubs, you're the circus, you see this everywhere. You're like, we need to pay more attention to this.
Yeah.
Because something ain't right here. It's too much attention based off of BMF. The name will draw attention. While they did a great job because they showed them building this family atmosphere, there's this structure where everybody eats, everyone's happy, everyone like loves one another, everyone's willing to die for one another. At the same time, what we're not fully seeing yet, and I know we're going to get there, is the attention all of this draws.
Oh yeah, it's definitely loading up.
The hanger-ons, because if you don't think there's male groupies, come on, think about it for a minute here. How many of y'all remember like when rap groups was a big thing and people claiming G Unit and knew nothing about 50 Cent? You claiming Rockefeller, knew nothing about Jay-Z. Claiming Bad Boy, you knew nothing about Diddy. It's the same thing in the drug game where you're gonna latch on to these organizations, and BMF just happens to be a brand name. What my guy saying, American Gangster, it's a brand name. Like Blue Magic, it's a brand name. Like same thing, BMF, it's a brand name. So when people attach themselves to it, they're attaching more attention to what BMF is.
Yeah.
And you know how law enforcement is. They may take a while to catch on, but eventually they're gonna catch on if something is just drawing too much attention.
If I remember I'm in the club and I'm on the VIP and I see a group of just aliens looking white dudes just sitting there drinking beer, slowly looking up at us, I'm like, listen, they're not idolizing us. Yeah, it's definitely time to roll.
Time to go.
And it's interesting because the end of episode 2 left us with what's his name, which the
investigator.
The investigator, like, and they built him up very strong in 5 seconds, and he did not appear in this episode. Which now, in the end of this episode, we got the law enforcement folks, stating their presence, and I don't think we're going to come back to them episode 4. I think they're just going to have one episode that just shows you truly the downfall of everything.
Yeah.
But again, this episode felt a lot about the family aspect. The character witnesses, as I said, like humanizing Meech. He said he was a movie buff, which I'm like, all right, well, shit, get him on the YouTube. Like, we'll do some reviews. Like, he out here knowing movies. As long as he ain't trying to do nothing like, hopefully hopefully he ain't one of them stereotypical black movie buffs who like, yeah, look, my favorite shit's Snow in the Bluff.
Wow. Oh man.
What's Benny Siegel and them joint called?
Paper Soldiers or the greatest movie of all time, State Property 2.
State Property.
Hey man, look here. I ain't going. Look, State Property made. I got drunk one day, one New Year's, when State Property was out, and let's just say I went knocking on people's doors with something I should not have had, and I was just the get down and lay down part took over me, and God knows I should not have survived that night for the shit I was doing.
Oh my God! But they humanize him, say he a movie buff. Then we get all the other folks part of BMF as they're labeling them as loyal BMF member. We got J-Bo, got Yogi, who was the personal assistant who came up cleaning up the spot, and all of a sudden got hired the next day. He said she was like a sister. Obviously, she shared the same sentiments. We had Big Cuz, another BMF member. We had White Boy, Clifford Adams. And then they also talked about how they had to how they had to hide the drugs inside the cars, which is nothing new. But which was fascinating to me was the systematic approach of it. That I did not know. I heard shit like that back in the day, but I was like, there's no way. There's like a whole pattern of like honk the horn twice and da 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 da.
Hey, you got to find different ways to lock it, because I mean, again, as you say, it's nothing new for them, because this was happening before them, of doing the secret compartments and things like this. But you got to put a code to it. Nigga, it's a combination. You can't just leave it out there where anybody can get into it. You don't want that to happen, because it not only just shows that we're looking out for law enforcement, we're looking out for other people.
Yeah,
if somebody take this whip and try to get inside it, you'll never get anything out of here.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know the system how to get it out of there.
Yeah.
No, and I peeped what you said real quick. I peeped what you said and the way they said it. Loyal members of BMF.
Yep.
That says a lot, because we're gonna get into other members of BMF then.
And that's what we want in the documentary. We want these new interviews, this new audio. Obviously I asked about a specific person being a part of it. I kind of did not get the answer, but I kind of did get the answer, and I'm not even going to highlight it. You got to listen, because I think there was a slight slip up, but I'm not a person that's going to sit here and cause any trouble here.
Oh, not at all. Just watch them all. Watch all episodes.
But I think
that point you'll realize what we talk about.
Yeah, I think this is a good building of a crescendo in terms of storytelling. You know, get us in the doors, get us interested, understanding the rise, because we all know the fall came, but like, you know, seeing the rise be built differently instead of just like a lot of money, popularity, rappers, and law enforcement,
cocaine, girls, drugs, every rap video of the 90s and 2000s. Instead, they're showing you like, nah, it was more than that. This was family. They built this to be together. Like, that was the purpose of this. It wasn't built out of greed. It was built out of necessity. And just because it was built out of necessity doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And here we see that they took that same necessity they had to make their lives better and brought other people in to do the exact same thing for them.
And I also think it's sort of a response to what he was dealing with at his home. I mean, you know, obviously him and his dad didn't click right. His mom obviously was somebody he really cared about, and he tried to be the man of the house, and obviously he had his mishaps. So, you know, he's looking now for shelter, and shelter happened to be family. So he's creating family, but he's still creating for the right reason, because there is a lot of money involved, but I think overall there's a level of trust and respect, and I think that's like the highlight of everything. Because you bring up Frank Lucas, I mean, let's just look at the complete opposites here. Frank Lucas got in with a measure of like an opportunity, then he struck fear, you know, and then he brought his family in, but he never respected his family, and they were just all happy to be here. This worked for him.
They all worked for him.
It wasn't at the fights. It wasn't at the fights with him. You know, any moment that he could get an opportunity to embarrass one of them, he did, you know? So, like, and his women as well too. And the big thing that we should also note in this too is that we don't fight over women in BMF. Everybody across the board said that. Now there is going to definitely be somebody that's going to say otherwise, because there's always going to be somebody.
Of course, there's always somebody who got their girl taken or something of that nature, and you want to blame everyone else for that. Like, nah.
Of course. So, and obviously that shows you why him and I'm about to say, well, Lamar, but you know, is why their beef was so intensified. But again, you know, it's just really humanizing him and understanding that this organization was built with family, with drugs around it. And so, like, yeah, kind of like, again, my whole very, very labeled statement of like, he didn't seem like a bad guy, but sure, yeah, you know, definitely did some bad things. So.
Hey, just because you dabble in things and you may do some negative things don't make you a negative person.
Yeah.
That's all it breaks down to. Your circumstances can lead you astray in a way that you never thought humanly possible. That does not mean you're a bad person.
That's literally the tagline of what they want to portray in this. That's all that is. This is a person by circumstance led into these circumstances to survive. Detroit did not give opportunities. He made his opportunity global expansion, bigger, brought other people in, et cetera, and so on. So,
I mean, even looking at it real quick, just let me say this, or even just looking at it in the sense of, look at the way we look at people like Meech and, well, maybe not Alpo because of other issues, but the Wayne Perry's, what's my other guy out of DC, Rayful, things of that. The way we look at them versus the way you look at the Italian mob bosses, how they're beloved by everybody. Like, oh man, John Gotti doesn't. Them niggas was straight killers. They didn't care about other folk. But we don't look at black people in this industry the same way. They're always going to be held as a rung lower, and that's the problem. What's the difference? If you're telling me like, well, John Gotti was raised in this situation, that's why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
Most of these dudes had their back against the wall and had to make a way to get out of it. Granted, you may not like the way they did it, and it's not always going to be positive, but yet and still, they saw an opportunity and took it. Again, it ain't gonna always be positive, but if we're gonna hold them to that esteem of saying it's not positive, so forget them. All these other families that they've seen, the Jewish mob, the Italian mob, the Hasidic Jews, or I forget what you called them, like stuff of this nature, that everyone needs to be viewed the same. Yeah, because there's no difference.
Yeah. Anyway, folks, we got some more work to do because we got some more episodes to cover. So get back to us next week for episode 4. Jump in the comments, let us know your thoughts about episode 3 tonight, and we'll see you back in 1 week. Y'all be safe out there.